My cousin married my tyrannical ex-boyfriend, badmouthed me in her wedding speech, and then tried to break into my house at night. My cousin Julia, 27, started dating my ex-boyfriend Louis, 29. 2 years ago, I was 27 and had been in a relationship with Louis for 3 years. We started dating after he graduated from university, and I was in my second year of college. We broke up a couple of weeks after my 20th birthday. To be honest, the relationship wasn't the best, and I really regret that this was my first adult relationship. We seemed like the perfect couple from the outside, but in reality, it was different. He was very insecure and controlling and forbade me from going to bars with my friends or talking to male friends. He constantly monitored me, and if I didn't do what he wanted, he would manipulate me into believing that I was to blame for the relationship not working out. I was very afraid of losing him and did everything I could to keep Louis from leaving me, but it still wasn't enough to make him stay. In the end, he broke up with me, saying that it wasn't working out between us, and then blocked me so that I couldn't contact him. I tried very hard to get in touch with him, but after we broke up, he completely disappeared. 2 months later, I found out from friends that he already had a new girlfriend. So it was a complete waste of my time. After we broke up, we didn't talk for a long time, but then, when I turned 25, he finally unblocked me and wrote me a birthday greeting. I didn't reply and thought it was strange that he was writing to me at all, since I already had a boyfriend by then. But he continued to write to me despite my silence, and in the end, I had to block him. After that, we didn't talk for several months again, but just a few months after my birthday, Julia invited me to her house. When I arrived, she said she wanted to introduce me to her boyfriend, and it turned out to be Louis. It turned out that he had written to me on my birthday precisely because he wanted to mend our relationship. They had met at work, started dating, and were very serious about each other. Julia and I had been very close since childhood, so this came as a real shock to me. She knew perfectly well how badly we had broken up and how toxic he was towards me. So I was completely shocked to learn that they were now together. She said she understood my discomfort, but asked me to give him a chance. I really wanted to try to accept the news, but it was too much for me. I wanted to be happy for Julia, but Louis was someone who had caused me a lot of pain in the past. It was my first serious relationship. In middle and high school, I had only had crushes. He ruined my life, so I felt enormous resentment towards him for his behavior. I tried to explain to Julia as tactfully as possible that, although I wished her happiness, I couldn't accept that she was now with Louis and didn't want to be part of her life anymore. She was very upset and tried to talk to me several times, but I couldn't come to terms with it because she knew better than anyone how toxic he was to me and how deeply he had traumatized me. But she continued to see him, claiming that he had changed and was now a better person. I didn't believe it. She was free to have a relationship with him. I had no problem with that, but I also had the right to exclude him, and her along with him, from my life. It was easy for me. Of course, it was hard for me because Julia and I were not just cousins, but also very good friends. However, for my own peace of mind, I had to make that decision. After she told me that she had started dating Louis, I almost stopped talking to her. For the last 2 years, we have been cold towards each other. When she realized that I wasn't going to talk to her, she started acting distant herself. And I don't blame her for that. We met at family events and just ignored each other, even though we used to always stick together and gossip about everyone. Now, everything has changed, and to be honest, I was fine with that. Everyone has their own life, and everyone is free to do as they please. I had no complaints about Julia, I just didn't want to talk to her anymore, that's all. But apparently, she took it to heart and wanted to get back at me. She started spreading nasty rumors about me among our relatives, trying to ruin my reputation. I thought it was completely unnecessary, because I would never have done that to her. Never, even despite our tense relationship. Over the past year, she told me that I was the reason for her breakup with Louis, and that I supposedly had no moral principles. Together with Louis, they spread rumors that I was flirting with other guys right in front of him, and that this was supposedly the real reason for his jealousy and desire to control me. They made it seem as if I was a flirtatious woman who made him feel insecure. In reality, it was the opposite. He was the one who allowed himself to flirt excessively with other girls and expected me to take it calmly. At the same time, he didn't like that I had male friends, with whom I simply communicated. He constantly manipulated and wanted me, forcing me to gradually give up communicating with everyone who was dear to me. I was very hurt that they tried to discredit me in front of my own family. But to be honest, I was too busy with my own life to take it seriously. Besides, no one really believed them, so I decided not to react. I knew that my reaction was exactly what they wanted, so I deliberately did not give in to their provocations. Besides, I knew perfectly well that if I wanted to, I could easily put an end to all this. All I had to do was talk to my aunt, who would quickly sort things out. Even though I was no longer close to Julia, I still had a very good relationship with her mother. My aunt is a federal judge, and I was sure she would do the right thing. She is my father's older sister, and everyone knows she has an iron will and would never do anything dishonest or wrong. I don't understand how Julia could have grown up like that, considering who her mother is. One conversation with my aunt would be enough to put an end to this whole circus. But I also understood that it would greatly harm Julia herself, as she was financially dependent on her mother. She had recently launched her own line of jewelry, but from what I heard, things weren't going very well for her. In any case, I didn't want to bother my aunt with such trifles and was sure that I could handle everything myself, so I didn't say anything to her. Besides, I was even curious to see what other ridiculous rumors they would come up with about me. After all, my cousins regularly came over and told me that Julia had been talking about me again. So for me, it became more of a game and entertainment. Then, 6 months ago, they got engaged and announced their wedding date. Soon my parents received an invitation, but I did not. I was fine with that. I didn't expect an invitation to their wedding. Even if I had been invited, I wouldn't have gone, considering everything that had happened between me and Julia, not to mention Louis. The wedding took place 3 days ago, and for me it was a normal day. I didn't think much about what was going on there, but at some point my phone started buzzing with messages from relatives. Everyone was actively discussing some speech that Louis and Julia had given at the wedding, and I was completely confused. Then my parents called and said we needed to talk urgently. They were the ones who told me what had happened, and at that moment I lost my temper. It turned out that they had decided to take advantage of the situation and had made a disgusting speech about me at the wedding, spreading all kinds of filth to a large audience. They wanted to turn all my relatives against me, and they might well have succeeded if I hadn't had evidence I could use against them. Julia and Louis were clever enough not to mention my name directly, but they kept referring to a certain ex-girlfriend who wasn't at the wedding. This clearly pointed to me, because who else could they have meant? They repeated all the rumors they had been trying to spread about me for a long time, that I was a flighty gold digger who was completely dependent on Louis and expected him to pay for everything. He was supposedly forced to support me because I insisted on it, being a regular student with no extra money, and therefore demanded financial support from him. But that was also a complete lie. I always insisted that we split the costs of our dates evenly, and I never expected him to pay for anything, let alone demanded it. But the worst thing they said about me was that I was allegedly cheating on him, and, according to them, it was my infidelity that caused our breakup. At the wedding, they said they were very happy that I was no longer in their lives and that I wasn't at the celebration because they didn't want such a negative influence around them. They even gave their relatives an ultimatum. From now on, they would invite either me or them to family events. If I was there, they wouldn't be. After that, people literally flooded my phone with messages about this situation, but I only learned the full picture of what had happened from my parents, and, as I said earlier, I was incredibly angry. I thanked my parents for leaving the wedding immediately after this speech, unwilling to tolerate the nastiness Julia had resorted to. My parents also told me that my aunt was completely baffled by what was happening and immediately spoke to them to clarify whether what Julia had said in her speech was true. After all, it was completely unlike me, and she was right. I really hadn't done anything like that, and her doubts about the truthfulness of her daughter's words were completely justified. Anyway, after I found out what they had said about me in the wedding speech, I decided not to hold back anymore and found old screenshots of conversations that proved they were lying. I had to dig around quite a bit, and it took me a long time to scroll through the correspondence to find the messages I needed. Fortunately, after a very long time, I was finally able to find the correspondence between me and my ex that I was looking for. These messages were sent around the time of our breakup, and at that time he was acting particularly toxic and cruel. He said a lot of nasty things to me, like he regretted ever starting to date me, that he had wasted 3 years of his life. even though he could have been with others, because he said he had plenty of options at the time. But now, finally, he would be dating other women. There was no mention of any betrayal, and I'm sure if I had really cheated on him, he wouldn't have let me go. It's that simple. I scrolled through the correspondence further and found other messages where he behaved toxically towards me. After that, I posted it all online, without explanation, without a caption, because these chats spoke for themselves. And that's how it turned out. After publishing the screenshots, people started writing to me again and leaving comments under the post, saying that they already knew that everything that had been said about me was untrue. They found it very strange that I could behave like that, because they had known me since childhood, and I was not the kind of person capable of such things. These screenshots clearly proved that it was all a lie. And the realization that my family was on my side, not theirs, meant everything to me. What's more, several people wrote to me saying that they had left the wedding because of what had been said about me. So, although Julia and Louis hoped to turn people against me, their speech backfired. And now they have no one on their side. Even my aunt, Julia's mother, turned her back on them. They contacted me right after the wedding and literally begged me to forgive them. Because, as it turned out, after my aunt saw the screenshots I posted, she talked to them and told them how disappointed she was that Julia was such a liar and tried to ruin my reputation just because I didn't want to continue my relationship with her after she messed around with my ex. By that point, most of the guests had already left the wedding because of all the drama. My aunt also told Julia that she was deeply upset by her behavior and had expected more from her. So, until she apologizes to me and I forgive her, my aunt no longer wants anything to do with them. And then my aunt left the wedding, despite the fact that Julia tried her best to change her mind. After all, she was really dependent on her mother financially. That same night, the two of them called me and started apologizing tearfully because they realized they couldn't cope without my aunt's support. She had been supporting Julia financially for quite some time. She was planning to close her business and take a break, which meant she would be even more dependent on her mother. But since her aunt decided to abandon her, their plans came to an end. Julia became seriously concerned about her future. That's why she got in touch. She wanted me to forgive her, delete the post, and talk to her aunt. I was too angry about everything that had happened and refused, blocking them both. But since then, they have been desperately trying to contact me and persuade me to change my mind. And now I'm really confused. I don't know what to do. My aunt is a very decent person. We talked, and she wrote to me herself the day after the wedding to apologize for everything Julia did. I said I didn't want my relationship with Julia to ruin my relationship with my aunt. I didn't let that happen before, and I'm not going to let it happen now. So everything is fine between us. I know for sure that if I talk to her, I can sort everything out for Julia. But to be honest, I don't feel like I have to do that. She is a grown woman and should deal with the consequences of her actions herself. On the other hand, I feel uncomfortable with the thought that I could help her and am deliberately not doing so. In short, I'm confused. So please help me. Am I wrong not to want to talk to my aunt and persuade her to forgive my cousin after she made that disgusting speech at her wedding? It's me again. Well, I suggest you pause this video right now and write your comments. What do you think the author should do? Try to mend her relationship with Julia or do nothing? Personally, I think her doubts about whether she can help but is consciously not doing so, as she says, are completely unfounded, because Julia could have just done nothing, at the very least. But she did something. She caused trouble. In other words, Julia's only concern in this situation was how to annoy her friend as much as possible. So yes, I think there's nothing to be done here. One update? Hi. First of all, thank you all so much for your comments and support. Before I move on to the update, I want to clarify one thing. My parents attended the wedding, as did many other family members, because they belong to the older generation. They had no idea about the rumors that were circulating about me. Louis and Julia talked about it mainly to our cousins, relatives of our age. They didn't tell the older ones about it. So, my parents had no idea what was being said about me and came to the wedding solely out of respect for my aunt. Although they guessed that something was wrong between me and Julia after she started dating that guy. But I deliberately didn't tell them anything or complain, just like my aunt, because I didn't want to drag them into such petty squabbles. I was above that, unlike Julia and Louis. The point is, my parents weren't aware of it, so they went to the wedding. There's no need to blame anyone or be angry with them. As soon as they and some other older people found out what was being said about me at the wedding, they left immediately and stopped talking to Julia and Louis. So that's clear. Now let's get to the point. A week has passed since the wedding. I blocked Louis and Julia so they couldn't contact me, but that didn't stop them. They keep creating new social media accounts and sending me messages, even though I keep blocking them over and over again. They are desperate, but I am determined not to get involved or help them. I continue to keep in touch with my aunt, and she has made it clear that she will only start supporting her daughter again after I forgive her. But, to be honest, I don't think I should forgive my cousin, because for a whole year I kept quiet and let them say nasty things about me just because they took them seriously, and they took that as a green light and crossed all boundaries. Now, let them answer for it. There is one more thing. To be honest, I don't think she deserves her mother's support at all. She's almost 30, and in my opinion, at that age, a person should already understand what they want from life. I just can't imagine how it's possible to still be financially dependent on your parents. And it's not that she's uneducated or incapable. She's just always been too lazy to hold down any kind of job. She was the same when we first graduated, and I hoped she would grow out of it, but nothing has changed. So, in fact, I'm even doing her a favor, because the lack of financial support from her aunt may finally teach her to work, or at least do something seriously. In any case, I've already made up my mind. I'm not going to help her. I discussed this with my parents to get rid of my guilt, and they said they fully support my decision. Whether to forgive her or not is entirely my choice. I don't have to forgive her if I don't think she deserves it, even if I worry about her future. Besides, Louis still has a good job, and he can easily support the two of them if they really want to live without my aunt's help. In the end, I talked to my parents, my friends, and you guys here, and most of them think I have no reason to feel guilty. And, to be honest, I feel much better now, but I still deleted that post with screenshots of the correspondence because I didn't see the point in keeping it any longer. The whole family already knew what had happened, and I didn't want it to remain on my profile. After all, many other people follow me, and it would be difficult to explain everything to them. So it was easier to just delete it. Now I'm trying to focus on myself and let go of all the anger and guilt that has been building up inside me over the last few days. I've gone back to meditation, trying to distract myself and get through all this as calmly as possible. I really hope that Julia and Louis will finally start living their own lives, instead of building them around me and making me the reason they get out of bed in the morning, as has been the case until now. I think it will be better for all of us. Update 2, hello! It's been a month since the wedding, and as far as I know, Louis and Julia are back to their old ways. My aunt still isn't talking to them because I haven't forgiven them. But at this point, I don't have to, because I understand perfectly well that their apologies were not sincere, and they only apologized for the money from my aunt. They didn't feel sorry, they just wanted financial support. A couple of days after unsuccessful attempts to convince me to forgive them and talk to my aunt, they gave up. When they realized that I wasn't responding, and then they started spreading rumors about me again, but this time they were particularly inventive. It turns out that now they are telling everyone that I am deliberately trying to ruin their relationship with my aunt because I want to take all the inheritance for myself. This makes no sense at all. It's completely absurd, as if I were capable of such a thing. My parents are doing fine financially. It's ridiculous to even talk about it. I have a good job and I support myself. I don't even think about any inheritance because, at this rate, with God's help, I won't have to depend on anyone financially. Maybe they need money. That's what they think. Anyway, now they tell everyone they meet in the family, and that happens often. We all live in the same city, and they live near several of our relatives. People are starting to avoid them like the plague, but they still find a way to talk about me. I don't understand why they are so fixated on me. I've been doing nothing for a whole month, just ignoring them, but they still can't let go of what happened. Anyway, last week I finally got fed up with it all and told my aunt everything. She said that even if they apologize now, she's still not going to resume contact with them. She even told Julia that directly and blocked her again. Now they're even angrier with me than before. I know this because they created another email account and sent me a very nasty message. That's the only way they can contact me now. They wrote that I'll pay for all this. Yeah, right. Scary, scary. I understand that they're freaking out right now, and even though I'm not really scared, it's annoying to say the least. I replied that if they try anything against me, I'll call the police immediately and send them to jail, without a doubt. So let them think about what they're doing. I hope it will condemn them. And if not, well, I have an excellent security system at home. Update 3. So, 4 days ago, I received a letter from Louis and Julie saying that I would have to answer for everything I had done. I warned them again that if they tried to do anything to me, I would immediately report them to the police. But that didn't stop them, and they did the most idiotic thing they could have done. Last night, they tried to break into my house. Julia has been to my house many times, and she knows very well that I have a very advanced security system. So as soon as they even tried to open the door, the system immediately notified me. I don't understand why they decided that my door could be opened in the middle of the night. I immediately called the police and reported that someone was trying to break into my house. I had a feeling it might be Julia and Louis, but just in case, I didn't take any chances. The police arrived in about 15 minutes, and unfortunately for them, they were dressed like real burglars. They were arrested near my house as they tried to escape. They had arrived on bicycles. They tried to convince the police that they knew me personally and had no intention of stealing anything. They just wanted to break in and talk to me, scare me a little. I don't understand why they confessed to this, as if it made their behavior more acceptable from a legal point of view. As soon as Julia was handcuffed, she immediately burst into tears and began begging me not to press charges against her. But I no longer had any sympathy for her. You can't cheat all the time and expect to be forgiven. Louis looked at me with pure hatred, but I didn't care. I was used to it by now. After that, I just went to bed. I had to go to work early in the morning, and in the morning I told my aunt and parents everything. They said they already knew. Julia used her phone call to call my aunt and ask her to get her out of the police station. But my aunt didn't even go to visit her, so now no one knows what will happen next. I'm definitely going to file a complaint against them because I want to get a restraining order. They've obviously lost their minds, and I don't want anything to do with them anymore. Well, that's it. Unfortunately, there are no more updates.